Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, the big story for me today was the fact that Starbucks in Buffalo, New York, the workers there voted 19-8 to join and form their union. And that is huge news. One down, 8,952 more to go. You kick open the door and you start marching through. And this is a great thing. But here's my problem. Shouldn't have been this difficult. Shouldn't have had to go over all these hoops. Shouldn't have had to jump all these obstacles. Shouldn't have to put up with all the harassment and intimidation and all of that. And you look at what happened down in Alabama with Amazon. Same thing. We need, in the worst way, comprehensive, major labor law reform. And here to share some thoughts on what's going on in labor here in our country, I've asked Marty Walsh to come talk with us. Marty is the U.S. Secretary of Labor. Marty, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on tonight.
So, I'm looking at this Starbucks thing, which is a huge win. And I gotta tell you, my first thought now comes to what happens if they close that store?
I don't think they will. I hope they don't because the workers organized. And I think that, President Biden has said this, and I believe this and said this myself. Workers should have the right to organize. And if they organize, they should be negotiate the contract and be respected. And if a union, if workers decide not to organize, in a free and fair election, that's okay too. Because I think the burden's on the union to do it, but the obstacle shouldn't be there. So I don't think they'll close. I'd be disappointed if they close. Starbucks is a company that a lot of people use, a lot of union members use, and I think it would be a sign of bad faith.
Yeah, but we've seen other places do this. The Walmarts of the world have gotten away with this stuff. So in my mind, that's what pops up. But you look at this 19-8 vote, and I guess I was expecting a little larger margin, having seen all of the things that were played out in public, but a good outcome nonetheless.
No, true. And if you look at the number, 19-8, the polling shows it was a little higher. 70% of American people, particularly younger people, like the idea of joining a union. That's the first time in decades that we have those types of numbers. And again, I think, as a union person, you are as well. I think that unions, we have to do the union, I'm not in the unions anymore. I'm in the union, but I'm not part of the union labor movement that way. But I think we have to do a better job of explaining who we are, what we're all about, not just to companies, but also to workers across America. And I think that there's a narrative there. But I think this is a big step for organized labor in this country. And I think that a lot of eyes now are going to focus on Alabama to see what happens down there.
Yeah, no, for me, the frame of union job, better life is the frame. I, as a kid growing up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland, when you saw someone in the neighborhood get a union job, immediately their lives got better. They had food at the end of the month. The kids had secondhand bikes, and eventually they moved out. So that frame of union job, better life is something that should be talked about and displayed more often, I think.
No, you're right. And also not just that, but if you look at the pandemic and you look at the conversations about worker shortages or lack of good jobs and all these open jobs, that's true. We have a lot of open jobs in the country. But if you look at union jobs, people went back to work. They went back to work because they had protections there. They had good benefits, good salaries, and maybe not the highest salary, but they had comfort. And I think that says a lot about the American worker and the organized labor. And so we'll see what happens. But I definitely think that you talked about labor reform law. There's no question about that. The PRO Act that President Biden filed in January is a step in the right direction there. Obviously, we have to get 60 votes in the Senate to do it. But in the Build Back Better provision, there is some of the PRO Act in that would create penalties for anti-union rhetoric on work sites. So I think hopefully that stays in there when it goes to the final passage in the Senate. And then we just got to continue to move forward. We also have the worker empowerment task force that the president appointed myself. I'm the vice chair. The vice president is the chair of it. We're going to be releasing a report pretty soon on that. So there's a lot of good things happening in this country.
No, I'm with you, and I'll be honest. This is the most pro-union administration of my lifetime. I know, Barack Obama talked a good game, but he talked about those comfortable shoes and walking the picket line. And I'll tell you, the only picket line I've walked on where someone from an administration has come forth is you. You were here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, walking the picket line with the Kellogg workers. I don't remember that from past administrations.
Yeah, and going out there was, I wouldn't call it symbolic, but it's also an opportunity to let the company know that I'm willing to try and intervene when I need to. And I want, when there's strikes, and I've done this a lot as mayor of Boston, as a state representative, as the head of the building trades. I've done a little bit as mayor, as the Secretary of Labor. I'm willing to sit both sides down and get to an agreement. And it doesn't help anyone picket lines. It doesn't help the workers that are out there fighting for better wages or better conditions. It doesn't help the company on productivity. So anytime that I can offer my support to try and resolve a dispute, I certainly am going to do that. I've been on both sides of the aisle as mayor. We said this offline. As mayor of Boston, I negotiated against unions with contracts. As the head of the building trades, I negotiated for contracts with unions. So I get how it works, and I get the passion that goes into it, and I just think that all sides have to start having more conversations and dialogues.
Conversation and dialogue and negotiation and getting to the table is key to all of this. But now, the Kellogg's folks are now saying, well, the heck with you. You're not going to take our last offer. We're going to fire all of you and replace you. That's not the spirit of the law that I understand the NLRA to be. Are there any consequences if they do fire everybody?
Well, I can't really get into too much of that right now, but certainly we're watching that very closely. The John Deere strike with the UAW, the membership voted that first one down, and they went back to the table right away and they got a deal done. Hopefully the same thing can happen here. I think that threats and innuendos don't work. I do think that you just got to stay at the table. There's a lot of passion out there, and you got to stay at the table.
No, that's the answer. And the answer is we do need comprehensive labor law reform. And I brought this up earlier. What happened in Alabama, what we saw happen here with the Starbucks organizing, this is way too many obstacles, way too difficult for workers to be able to just exercise what is their right in this country, and that is to freely join and form unions and to collectively bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions. So we desperately need some reforms.
No, there's no question about it, and hopefully we can. We'd like to see that proactive passed and level the playing field here for folks that want to join a union. I mean, that needs to be. Right now, it's not a level playing field.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Marty Walsh. He's the Secretary of Labor here in the U.S. Somebody who I'm very happy is in that position. I'll tell you, Marty, I was happy when you were there, a union guy in that position. We haven't seen that in a while. So somebody who has fought the fights, has walked the picket lines, it's good to have someone in that position. I'm now looking at all the attacks that are going on against the administration on the supply chains. And we've got some problems supply chain wise. And I think you guys have done the best you can do given the circumstances of alleviating some of those problems. You want to walk me through some of the stuff you've been up to?
Yeah, I went out. I've been visiting ports around the country. I was in Philadelphia. I visited the port in Philly. I was down in South Carolina. I visited the port in South Carolina. But the biggest port that has the biggest issues is Los Angeles and Long Beach. And I was out there last week, and I spent some time with the company. One of the companies. I spent some time with truck drivers, with the Teamsters, with the ILWU, that's the Longshoremen Union out in that part of the country. Lots of conversations about it. The one thing just for this time of year. The president has been promised by the big box stores that we will have enough product. There's enough products on the shelves in the warehouses to get through Christmas. So I think that's first and foremost something that we got to just put right on the table right off the bat. The supply chain issue is complicated. It's truckers, it's trucking, it's warehousing, it's space, but we can't lose sight of a pandemic. And a lot of places where these products are made around the world, they shut their factories down because of the COVID-19. So, we can't all of a sudden just erase the fact that with a year and a half ago, we have had a major pandemic where most of the world's economies were shut down, meaning they weren't producing. People were afraid, and governments literally kept people at home, and that has ramifications, and that's what we're feeling now. And I think that as the new year comes into play, there's been a lot of emphasis. The White House has focused very, very closely on this. I've been involved. We do have to work on trucking. I mean, that seems to be one of the biggest obstacles we have. We have lots of different challenges. We have independent contractors. We have companies out there. We have workers that are misclassified. We have all kinds of different pieces out there. So we do have to get a better. No, I don't use the word supply chain. A better process for truckers, and we're working on that now at the Department of Labor. We're going to be rolling some things out in the next couple of weeks about that to see how we can combat that. When I met with the companies out there, one company employed 100 drivers, another company employed 150 drivers, and we got to see, do they have the ability to build up capacity in their companies? And the way the system works in LA, and it works, I guess, but the shipping companies run the docks. The truck companies do the trucking. The dispatching companies do the dispatching. So the three different types of companies out there, and we just need to make sure they continue to talk to each other.
Yeah, and for me, as somebody who's been a truck driver for over 30 years and has spent a lot of time in this industry, I look at what's going on at that port with the misclassification and the abuse of those truck drivers, and I'm surprised anybody works there at all, given some of the conditions and the things that have gone on down there. That's my take on it. So when you look at this moment, I'm not surprised that they're having a hard time finding people.
No, and quite honestly, I think we've had a trucking shortage in this country for a little bit. It's not just simply right now, but I think the pandemic has certainly shined a big spotlight on it. And same with bus drivers. We have issues in school districts all across the country of shortage of bus drivers, and we're looking at how do we ease that gap too. I mean, ease that burden as well. So there's been some big issues here. And but what it comes down to is respecting the worker. So if you're paying somebody a decent wage, a good wage, not just a decent wage, a good wage, and you're expecting them as an employee, we will get people going into that industry. If people aren't going in that industry, not going in that industry for a reason.
Yep.
And probably one of the biggest reasons is the fact that they're not earning even just a living wage. So that's causing problems, and they have expenses. They own, a lot of these independent drivers own their own truck. They have to fix their own truck. They have to put the gas in their own truck. They have to change the tires in their own truck. They have to do all the maintenance in their own truck. And if they're not earning a wage that they can help raise their family, put food on the table, and fix their truck, then you know what? Why would they drive?
No, I'm right there with you. And a lot of them, they get into these lease agreements that end up, pigeonholing them into poverty wages. And it's something that does have to be addressed. If there is a shortage, and I'm going to dispute a little bit of it, if there really is a shortage, I learned in economics classes 100 years ago, if there's a shortage of something, the price of it should go up. So if you want to attract people, you make the conditions better, you make the wages better. That's how you bring people into it. For me, it's that simple. But I did want to ask your thoughts on the inflation and where the economy is right now, because I saw some statistics that caught my attention, like GDP's up well over 7%. After inflation, wage growth up 3%. Unemployment claims down to a 52-year low. It seems like things are going in a good direction. So why do we keep hearing the sky is falling from my friends on the right?
Well, I think a lot of it is rhetoric and just to get people concerned. There's no question though, we are dealing with inflation. The president laid out a plan to take on inflation. This week, we haven't heard the news of gas and oil prices going down that much, not as much as when they go up. But gas and oil prices both went down. I think that's important for this time of year, particularly winter coming. Lots of people in all over this country, and I think that the president, I think wages going up. Some people said it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Seeing people have more money in their pocket, American people have more savings in their pocket. But when I say that, I'm not sure lower wage workers how much savings they actually have. The one stat that keeps getting brought to my attention is that low wage workers' wages are going up. And they're going up higher than inflation, so that's a good thing. But I think again, we're living in a time that is unprecedented. I mean, we can't lose sight of that. I think that I'm not saying you're not saying that, but when I talk to people, it's like all of a sudden we kind of are forgetting the fact that we're living with a pandemic. When a year and a half ago, I was mayor of Boston on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I had to shut down schools. Businesses were closed. Restaurants were closed. Sporting entertainments were canceled. Everything stopped because of a pandemic. And I don't think we ever realized in America that would happen. We had people that were dying. We had to build excess capacity for our hospitals. We had people on ventilators around this country. And when that happened, it changed a lot of things. And so I think as we continue to move forward here, we'll get better. But I still think there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty. I just don't like the fact when people play on people's fears during a pandemic. We're still living in the pandemic, and
Yep.
People that are vaccinated that aren't going back to work, they're afraid of getting the virus because their coworkers aren't vaccinated. People that don't want to get vaccinated. Okay, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your decision. But wear a mask, get tested, do the things that are important, just so people know that they're safe going to the work site. Because you don't know what's in somebody's home. I didn't give my mother a hug for one whole year. My mother's older woman, and like literally, she was in the house. I was on the porch. I'd bring her some stuff and drop it off there and knock on the door and see her. But that has an impact on so many people. And then we lost 777,000 lives to date with COVID-19 in the United States of America, and over 5.1 or 5.2 million people around the globe. That's a lot of people that we lost because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and that idea of common decency, being caring about others. You don't care about yourself, at least care about some of the other folks. Last question I've got for you, in looking at the bipartisan infrastructure bill, you as a building trades guy got to be thrilled with this going through. And one of the things that I'm happy with is prevailing wage is in that law, and I know the Republicans tried to gut it, but it's there.
Yeah, no, and what the prevailing wage will do is make sure people get paid a decent wage when they work on these projects around the country. As a building trade guy, it's a great bill. I think it's going to do a lot, not just for workers, but it's going to do a lot for communities in our country, building new bridges, building new roadways, trains, public transportation, waterways, clean drinking water, no more lead pipes, broadband, electric charging stations. That's all great stuff. And then also in the Build Back Better bill that's being debated right now, or being discussed right now in the Senate. That's another important bill, but where you have child care and adult care and families that pay for child care today will pay no more than 7% of their salary if they earn $300,000 or less. And then there's money in there for workforce development, job training, and apprenticeships, and not just building trade apprenticeships, other apprenticeships. And if we truly want to move America forward, and this is what the president talks about, he wants to win the future. Win the future means manufacturing, means technology, means staying as a global leader in production. We need to continue to give opportunities for people so they can get trained in these different fields and they can better their life. You had an opportunity with the Teamsters. I had an opportunity with the laborers. We need to get more people to have the opportunities with that.
No, absolutely. No question about it. And I think one of the things I hope that we've learned out of this pandemic, especially when you're talking about supply chain, is we need to bring reshore manufacturing. We need to start building stuff here again. We wouldn't have the supply chain problems we have if we were manufacturing things in this country again. At least that's my thought.
That's true. And I was out in Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and I was at the groundbreaking of a solar panel factory, First Solar, and they're going to be building solar panels, United States, made in America solar panels. And they already have a factory there. They're going to add another, I think they said 5,000 jobs. That's a big deal. I mean, we just need to continue that. And this is an area that years ago had lots of manufacturing, and people live in communities that had manufacturing. We have the buildings, we have the warehouses. Now we need the investments to bring these manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America.
Absolutely. Marty, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Keep up the great work. Keep getting out on those picket lines and supporting workers. I appreciate your time. Hope you'll come back again soon.
I will. Thank you.
Good stuff. Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You got a question, comment, something that Marty talked about? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk.